We're going to talk about something that's actually super, super important, especially after you hit the age of 18. It's really important when you're a child, but you also, when you have your parents' involvement, it's a whole lot easier. You have a little bit more of that legal support behind you. But this is going to be the least happy version of what we present, this section, but it's really important. And we're going to talk about the difference between abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Have you guys heard those words before? Certainly abuse, right? We're going to talk about the difference between each and every one of them, and we gave you a big section in here on that, and it's going to start on page 16, that goes really deep into what each of those words means. And I'm going to give you just a brief overview, and then we're going to talk about some experiences that are different for, since I still feel like I'm 18, I'm going to say our generation, right? It's going to be a little bit different for our generation versus what maybe were scary places to get exploited in years before. Your generation, right? So abuse, and we have a lot more expanded definitions in here. But for the sake of this presentation, abuse is treating a person with cruelty or violence. So we can think of different types of abuse, right? The obvious one, physical abuse, kicking, punching, biting, all those kind of things, right? There's other kinds of abuse. There's emotional abuse, manipulation, right? You've seen that a lot. You can even see it in movies with people like, well, if you don't want to do it, I mean, that's fine, it's okay, right? It's being able to know the warning signs of what emotional abuse is, and it is still a kind of abuse. It's treating somebody badly, it's hurting somebody for their own gain, right? There's sexual abuse. We're going to talk about that a little bit. In particular, to me, they say internet, and I know what they mean when they say we got to be careful on the internet. I think we got to be careful on our phones, right? All the different apps. What are some of the different apps where you meet random people? Tinder. Yeah. Instagram. Facebook. Twitter. BB. A bunch. How about people who play video games? Meeting people on Xbox Live? Those people have a colorful vocabulary, right? Grace. Yeah? What? Meet a couple people online? BB is called BB. Yeah? What? She got 3 flip-flops on that. I got a lot of Grace. But what do we have to be careful with, right? All of it. All of it, for sure, right? And the reality is that, especially in times now, that's how we meet a lot of people. We meet people online. But there's certain things that we have to be careful of. Pictures, disseminating pictures, things that people ask us for. We're going to talk about certain things that we should never give out, and there's the obvious ones, but there's some that might not be so obvious, right? So we're going to talk about abuse. Let's talk a little bit about neglect so we can tell the difference between them. Because a lot of times you'll hear people say abuse, neglect, and exploitation. We're talking about abuse, neglect, and exploitation. No one can tell you which one's which. So now we know what abuse is. Let's talk a little bit about neglect. Neglect is failing to provide proper care. Let's go back to our dogs. I'm going to keep harping on this, right? Go back to our dogs. What's a way to neglect a dog?
Don't love it.
You don't love it? Keeping it locked up, right? Not feeding it, not walking it, not giving what it needs to survive, to be happy. We can neglect each other, but what else can we do? We can neglect ourselves, right? Decide, I'm not going to shower anymore. I'm just going to give up on showering. Just going to let it ride. I like me the way I am.
All the natural fibers.
That's right. Right? That's a type of self-neglect. And then there's a neglect when people are supposed to help you and they don't do it, right? Let's say that you have someone who's supposed to come in, and let's say that you have an elderly woman and she has someone who's supposed to come in and help her cook her food and she doesn't come, right? That's a big problem. So especially you want to be careful with keeping an eye on people who are supposed to be doing things to assist you, but at the same time, when you say that you're going to do something and you're going to help somebody else, you want to make sure that you do that too, right? Also, taking care of yourself first. You can absolutely self-neglect. So let's talk a little bit about exploitation, the longest of all of them. It's someone taking your money or property for their own gain. And this is not going to the mall and going and buying a shirt and paying somebody and then you get the shirt, right? We both gain from that. In my case, it'd be the shoe store, Lavaldo. It's probably some sort of financial exploitation against my poor husband, but other than that. So when we're talking about exploitation, we're talking about someone who's getting you to do something so that they can benefit from your stuff. Has anyone ever asked you, can I give me $20 and I'll give it back to you? How many of y'all have said yes? Yeah? Did you ever see it? Did you see $1 of that thing back? No, of course not. No, I don't. And let me tell you, I'm an adult and I do this all the time. Someone asks me, it's like, I don't even think about it and I just do it. And then before you know it, I'm who knows how many hundreds of dollars in the hole that I've given away. And I know I'm never going to see $1 of that thing back, right? That's an obvious one. But there's some people who are particularly good about it. And those people call you on the phone or they find you online, believe you me. And in the world of people who are elderly, we see this a lot because they were not conditioned over time like we are to recognize when someone online doesn't sound quite right. And let me tell you, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is, okay? So when you get that phone call, what we see a lot when people who are elderly is they get a phone call that says, hey, I work for the bank, and I'm just calling just to check up and make sure that everything's okay on your account. Can you give me your bank account number, the last 4 of your social, your birth date, and the name of your first pet? Right? They don't work for the bank. They don't work for the bank. Okay? Online, we see things that are similar to that. Have you all seen the clickbait? You go on there, and it's like, looks like the Wheel of Fortune wheel. It's going around. It's like click and you're going to win an iPad. You just got to plug in all your personal information. I don't know if you get an iPad at the end of that, but I can guess that you probably don't. So there's different types of exploitation. There's the obvious kind. People are going to interact with you. No, just give me this. You can just sign right here. You can walk away with this for free right now. Read that little tiny fine print. That good man over there is an attorney. I don't sign anything anymore without him taking a look at it. I don't sign anything. I don't sign thank you cards without him looking at it because I want to see that the fine print says that I'm not going to have to pay you $200 a month for the rest of my life, right? So exploitation is people have found scary ways to take advantage of other people. Now I want to talk about that a little bit too. Going into that, let's talk about making mistakes. Who here has never made a mistake? Never made a mistake. It's impressive. I make like 1,000 mistakes a day. Yeah, at least. Yeah. But the important thing is not making mistakes, it's learning from them. I learn more from the things that I mess up on than I do from getting it right on the first try. And that's because there's inherently other things that come with making a mistake, right? Embarrassment, feeling bad, messing up. I've made a lot of mistakes with money. Made mistakes with friends, right? People who you think are your friend and you find out later that they are not your friend. This stuff goes into that circle of support. It's about also knowing when the people around you that you might have thought were good people in your circle of support are not people who should be in there, right? Running with people who might not be looking out for your best interest. People who ask you to do things that you know you should not do. But as an adult, we have to be even more aware of this, right? Because with responsibility comes even more severe consequences. And this is a time to make mistakes and learn, but at the same time, it's a time to remember that some of the mistakes, some of the big mistakes we make can have huge consequences, legal ones, right? So things that maybe when we were 17 and 364 days old, we would not have the same consequences that we do at 18 in one day.
It's just like the criminal justice, it's just like the police. If you're under 18, they may charge you as a minor, and if you've done something wrong, and you won't get in that much trouble. But if you're over 18, as you know, you're treated like an adult, and you'll go to regular jail with all adults in it.
Right.
You know, that's a big change.
Just summarize it.
Yeah, so what he was saying is, if you're under the age of 18, then they might treat you as a minor. Now, over the age of 18, they treat you as an adult. And there's going to be a difference in what those penalties, what those consequences are, right? So we want to be able to, it's not to be afraid to make mistakes, but it's to be able to think about everything before we do it and decide whether or not it's worth the risk. And certain things, it could go either way, but it's being able to identify those, right? So let's talk about certain things that we should never just give to people when they ask us.
Money.
Certainly. I'm good at that point because I don't have anything to give away. So other than money, what else? If someone asks you for it, we're not going to tell them. Your social security number? Who said social security number? Perfect. Your Medicaid number. Yeah. Your bank account. Your credit or debit card. Do you know how many times my brother tried that with me? My brother's the sweetest person on the planet, but when we were like 18, 19, I had a credit card. He's like, hey, let me borrow your card. I'll give it back to you tomorrow. It's not going to happen. I learned. Took that card, came back, didn't run when I tried it. I don't know what he got, but it didn't work. Right? So there's certain things that when people ask you for them, you're never going to give them away. And then there's certain things also we got to be aware for when we're talking to people online. So things like our addresses, pictures of us, particularly pictures in compromising positions, right? Because if it exists online, it exists online. I don't care what they tell you, that stuff is on there. And that's not meant to scare you, it's just true. And one of the interesting things that we're seeing now, because we hire people, right? We have a team of people that work for us. And let me tell you, now our group will look at your Facebook before we give you an interview. They look you up. They want to see what you have on there. That didn't happen for us when people were hiring us. Now if we look for another job, they're going to do it. So you want to be very careful with what you put online, what information you put out there. You put yourself susceptible to other people being able to identity theft. You've heard that. People pretend to be you and then they get stuff, credit cards, other stuff in your name. Right? And you're held responsible for that.
College scholarships too.
College scholarships. That's right. Yeah, when you're looking at scholarships for school, they will look you up because they want to know who they're giving money to. They'll look you up and see. So I know that this isn't the happiest stuff, but let's talk about reporting. If you know that someone is doing this to somebody else or they are doing it to you, here are at minimum 2 places you can call. 911 is the obvious one. We know that one, right? There's another group called the Florida Abuse Hotline. They run out of the Department of Children and Families. And you can find their information. It's on page 20. Some different activities, that kind of stuff. But if you know anyone else who's in this position, sometimes reporting is the hardest thing, self-reporting. It's embarrassing for some people, but we can report on other people's behalf. Okay?
And it's important to know too that it's anonymous when you call it.
It is anonymous. You don't have to give any information about yourself. What they're not worried about is they're not worried about the caller, they're worried about the person who might be getting hurt.
So the person you're telling on will never know it's you.
They'll never know. Okay? Any questions, comments, thoughts? Okay.